There we go.
This is Between Hooksets. I'm Chasen Walter from In Through the Outdoors with my partner in slime, Curt Underhill from the fishing crew.
What's going on, buddy?
Technical issues.
Technical issues.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it'll happen, but yeah, so we have a few issues. We're starting a couple minutes late. So with that, I mean, we usually kind of shoot the crap a little bit, but we're going to jump right into this so we can get our guest on. So tonight we got the NWT Pro, Dusty Minke. How we doing tonight, Dusty?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man.
Great to have you.
You looks like you are out on the boat right now, hanging out. You got your boat hat on. Little different boat than you're used to, but
yeah, cruiser boat. There's no trolling motor. There's no active target on this one.
No active target on this one. So
dare I say just bikinis?
There might be. We'll keep. I know that we'd get the most views if. Well, who knows? Maybe they'll come in.
If you would have bumped that,
they're listening right now. So
yeah, we'll take the views any way we can get them.
So
I love it.
Dusty, you're not. I mean, for everybody in the walleye country, you're a pretty well-known name. You've been around this a long time. So let's, for people that know the name but maybe not know the guy, who is Dusty Minke? Where does he come from, and how did he get started in this industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm born and raised Forest Lake, Minnesota. I grew up in the northern suburbs of the Twin Cities, and I kind of, cut my teeth fishing Lake Mille Lacs. And you guys, we were talking a little earlier about where I got my start, and it was definitely Lake Mille Lacs. And then you start venturing more into the lakes of Minnesota, and actually I fished quite a bit as a young man on the St. Croix River. And then later in life, the Mississippi. So St. Croix River, Mille Lacs, and then I did my first Pro-Am event in the PWT when I was 18 right here on Leech Lake. I think I was fishing within 2 miles from where I'm sitting on the boat here. And I had 3 different pros, and don't get me wrong, I had a blast, but I also was at the same time at a young age, I was like, I can be the pro. So it was a dream of mine since I was 12 years old. And I fished a Pro-Am here on Leech. And eventually, I was a fishing guide on Lake of the Woods up in the northwest angle at Sunset Lodge for 3 summers. Still to this day, probably the funnest job of my life. Just got paid to take people fishing. And granted, on your off days, I was cutting grass and chinking log cabins and running bait and food and cool stuff like that. But I wouldn't change a thing. So that's kind of how I got my start here in northern Minnesota. And a full circle story. Like, I went to college at Bemidji State, and I remember calling my parents. I worked for Northland Fishing Tackle, and they had me down stocking the shelves at Reed's in Walker, Minnesota. And I called them and I said, you know what, I'm going to live here someday. And that's where I live right now. And I'm here on the water right now with my friends on the boat, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we already have a question, and I'm guessing this might be somebody upstairs wants to know, where did you get that hat?
One of my sponsors.
So full circle, you're living up in Walker, doing this. People think you probably do it full time, but the true Dusty Minke has a day job, and there's a lot more to it than people would guess. As you think you're these guys that have the wrap boats and do this, just get a fish all the time, and there's not many guys that do that. There's not many guys that just go fish full time. So you have a day job, but you have the luxury to be out fishing these tournaments. So for somebody that's thinking about doing this, like, how do you go about getting to, you've been on the tour FLWs. What has it been? 15, 20 years you've been doing this?
Yeah, I fished the FLW tour starting in like around 2010, and then the National Walleye Tour took over in 2013, and I've fished every event since the National Walleye Tour came out, which I think there's only a handful of us that have done that. So, but yeah, no, it's not easy. And I remember back in the day, I just wanted to do that. And, if I have any advice, like there's only a handful of guys that still do it now. I've been lucky. I found a cool job. I got to follow the footsteps of Chris Gilman. He's one of my bosses now. And it gets to, as long as you do your work and do it good, and they've allowed me to do this. So that's pretty awesome. But otherwise, there's not many guys who do it. So like I said, if I have any advice, it's like, get a good job that allows you the time, or the boss. A lot of my work too is taking customers fishing. Like I took a good customer fishing last week. I'm going to take another customer fishing here on Friday. You mix that into the schedule, and you can grow some great relationships, and just find a cool job or be your own boss. And you can do this.
Well, even some of these guys that quote unquote do it full time have their own businesses or side gigs. I mean, there's very few that make a living cashing checks on the National Walleye Trail.
Yeah, that's true. It's like I said, it's only a handful of guys. So
you get out there, you do this. I mean, obviously you have some great sponsors. You've had some long-term sponsors, and that's a whole nother job in itself, taking care of your sponsors and keeping longevity of sponsors.
Yeah. And my sponsors know that I'm not going to be on the social media as much as other guys are. I've got a day job, like it wouldn't look good if I'm on social media all day. Like, I've got manufacturers to represent and things to sell in a day job. So they understand when they sign up with me that they've got the rights to, to work with me and make things happen that way. But, other guys can promote themselves, and it's crazy because I've been here through the times of back when it was magazines and radio shows and TV shows, and now we're into social media, and it's crazy. Instagram, like I was checking out at a local dealer last night, and this kid's like, I seen this on Instagram, and I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. That's where we're at. And it's super cool. And I'm very lucky too to be a part of Tour Level Gold now. So I've gotten to see like all aspects of how things have changed over the years. When I went to college for media marketing, and it was all magazine, print, radio, things like that. And things have evolved now. It's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's social media. It's crazy. It's actually pretty cool how you can do something yesterday and it's posted and it's talked about, before it took a couple months or, weeks or half a year to get something out there into the public.
Everything's instant. Talk about, in the earlier days, this was, I think, just a few years ago, you and Jason Mitchell did a deal, and now, now you've moved on, and you've got a couple of pals in the NWT, and then Tour Level Gold. What an awesome rise to, I guess you'd have to say, stardom to a point, because you're a star to those who follow you.
Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate over the years. I've just been lucky. I've always worked hard and just been by the motto, like treat people how you want to be treated, be happy, have fun, and to be contacted back a few years back by Jason Mitchell to film a show, and him and I have grown to be great friends. Actually, some cool stories, like he was staying at my house and he's like walking around my house and he looked at my Wi-Fi password and he's like, "That's your password?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's my same password to everything." And I'm like,
Working in the IT security world, he shouldn't be announcing that, and it shouldn't be all his passwords.
No, like, yeah, probably take that now, but like, or change maybe. But, and then I kind of looked down at his shoes, and it was like, oh my! And then we started telling each other stories. It was like a couple of long lost brothers. I love fishing with that guy. We have a lot of fun together. Like whenever he calls, I'm like, oh yeah, when you coming? Let's go, and then, a crazy story, that people might not know is back in the day, Dwayne Helm was a young man, like 16. And I was fairly young. I think I'm about 10 years older than him, but we were down fishing, Oahe there at the Oahe Dam and intakes and stuff. And he was in a smaller boat with some friends. And he's like, I'm going to teach you how to fish around here. And I'm like, okay, I'm always, this kid like knew what he was doing. And I'm like watching him. I'm like, okay, I'm listening, or whatever. And he showed me some cool things. And, I met him at the boat launch and met with his friends and stuff, and just, shook hands, gave him my number, and we stayed in touch. And years kind of went by, and he's like, I want to be on your fishing team someday. And I'm like, you will be. And he's like, well, how do I get there? And I'm like, well, start winning a few tournaments, just stay in touch with me, and we'll be there someday. And all of a sudden, he was persistent, and he won the Gov Cup, and, like, guy's on fire. Like, he's a stud.
Yeah, 3 times.
And
right.
Yeah. So anyway, he's like, are you ready for me? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're ready. You can come play. And he came up to Sakakawea, Shimoda and Hoyer and I. And Hoyer's been, him and I have been buddies, and, we've traveled for years, so, and I'm like, hey, I'm letting this guy come and fish with us. And they're like, yeah, that'd be good. And he fished his first MWT there at Sakakawea, and we went 112 miles to our first spot, and it was like, not a problem. I'll do it. And he won. So we've been together ever since. And John and Bill and I, like, it's just kind of how we rolled. We're pretty easy going. And it was kind of a cool story with Dewey, how that all worked out when I met him, and where we're at today. It's pretty sweet.
That's kind of a crazy story. I guess I've known Dewey. I mean, I remember watching Dewey, crawl, walk, run through my circuit, and coming up to the Gov Cup, and then going to do that, and kind of the hometown hero boy, and I never knew how the relationship started. I didn't know how the relationship started. So that's a pretty cool story. And that's pretty awesome to hear that, that was how it started. Some kid on the water going, I'm going to show you how to fish this body of water. And then now your partners on the end, your teammates on the NWT. That's a pretty sweet story. So, so going into, well, we got a couple questions. That's a Between Hooksets mug. And then there's a question. How many claws do you have in that cup, Dusty?
It fits about 1.5. There's a little bit of leftover water. I'm trying to stay hydrated.
Yeah, you gotta hydrate while you dehydrate. Yeah. But so going to this tour level gold. I mean, first year I was like, I'll be honest with you, I watched and I'm like, you're the guy in the background, and I'm like, I kind of feel bad. Like, I love Dusty. I've known you a long time. I want to see him on there. And I was kind of a little bummed the first season. You were just kind of the guy in the background. And then when I heard you and Billy were getting on there, I was like, yes, I love this deal. And, how has that been? How was last year kind of just being the background guy and then leading into this year filming on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? It's something, that, like John and Dewey and I kind of talked about. And I'm like, God, how, with all the social media now and YouTube, and you see, in the bass, like, I love watching, like, Brandon Palyanick and Cooper Gallant, and good friends with Gussie. And you see these guys with their success. And I'm like, guys, just being in a marketing media background. I'm like, this is the future. And I would talk about it like, man, how sweet would it be to get like a college intern or team up with somebody and, you know, and I'm just throwing it around, but I just never had the time to dig into it and do it. And, you know, I'm really proud that John and Dewey, like, maybe listen to that, or I'm not taking any credit by any means, but like, I just think it was at a time in our life where something in the walleye world needed to happen like it was in the bass. Right. So
it's a great idea.
Those guys, they took over, and, you know, John's had a very successful career the last couple of years, and he gets it, you know, and same with Dewey. Like, they knew that to grow their sponsorships and to get that sort of recognition and following, that you need to do something like this. So for them to ask me, so yeah, it was kind of weird being in the background of it, but at the same time, you know, I have a full-time job, and it wasn't in the cards for me that year, and I'm just glad they did it and got the following that they did. And I got to be a little bit of a part of it. And then when they asked for me to do it this year, I was on board. And for our old buddy Bill, and Bill is one of my best friends, and I think it was very cool to bring us and kind of see a little bit of, it sounds weird, but a little bit of old school, you know. And
yeah, yes,
yeah, it's pretty cool. So I've really enjoyed it. The guys they got filming us, it's pretty, you know, because I'm the type of guy that doesn't want too many distractions. I'm already distracted enough. So when you put a camera in your boat, or you got to press a button on a GoPro, you know, it's just another thing to think about doing. But it's actually been pretty painless and pretty awesome. And the response and all the people reaching out, it's really cool. So it's
well. And like you bring a good point up, because after we started this, people are like, hey, we want to do this for the tournament. We want to do that. And we got GoPro lives. And I'm like, that sounds great, but there's a lot more to it than just putting a GoPro live on your boat. And, you know, there's a lot that goes into this. When we started this, I started filming with my laptop and a cheap webcam. And then now I got mics and I got soundboards. And I mean, you got interviewed at the Gov Cup last year, and it was just, you know, no mics, no nothing. And now we're, you know, soundboards and microphones hanging everywhere. And there's a lot more than just putting your camera up and going. And especially with the level of production that you guys are putting in, that's getting put into tour level gold, there's a lot to that. And we're definitely not the production guys. We can hit a button and go live. We can put up some cameras. We're learning. Chasen's really doing a great job learning the production side of things, but yeah, it's not, I mean, I'm sure it's not get done with your day fishing, get your boat ready, kick back, and then get up next morning, put your boat in. There's way more to a prep day than that.
Yep.
Don't you say you got someone hanging around you all the time? It's just, there's a camera in your face constantly. I mean, it's like, can you go to the bathroom without some following you into the bathroom?
Yeah, it's a little extra pressure, but you know, when these guys have made it easy. They get it. You know, Logan and Adam and the guys with more media, they just get it. You know, they get the stuff with hardly even doing it. So that's been a huge deal, because if there's somebody asking me too many questions or kind of like just making different decisions, like I've had camera guys in my boat that have drove me bonkers. Like one guy's answering the phone talking about his, you know, whatever he's got going on, or is talking to his wife, or how long are you going to stay in this spot? You know, like that's the last thing you want in your mind. You know, like you've got enough decisions in the day to make, and they've made it pretty easy. Actually, people have reached out to me like, why isn't this show an hour long? Why isn't it 2 hours long? Why isn't it weekly? They want more. You know, it's pretty cool.
Well, and it's a different take, right? I mean, that's what I like so much about it is, you know, no offense to the NWT or MWC, but I mean, we've seen that show over and over and over and over again. You know, you get a couple of footage of this, you get a couple footage of that, but you don't see the cooking going on at night, the sitting down at the table looking at a map, the rigging in a boat. You don't see any of that. And watching it gets, after you watch 10 of them, you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen next. And with tour level gold, you don't know.
Yeah, it's people don't understand. I think it's been an eye opener for a lot of people, even like girlfriends and wives and your bosses or anything. They just think you're going fishing and having fun, but it's dark to dark. It's a lot of work. People don't understand. It's grueling. It's hard on your body. It's there's a lot going on in your mind. It really is a cool thing that this has come out, and it shows you that there's a lot more going into it than what you think.
Yeah, whether it's a bad fuse, a broken wire, a power pole that somebody didn't put up, whatever it happens to be, or like John's, some bitch. I don't know, was that concoction he was making. I don't remember if it was for breakfast, but it looked like it had everything in it from the last 3 meals, but maybe not. It looked really good.
It was, and we don't do a big breakfast. It's like grab a cup of coffee, grab a Cliff Bar, But that was like prime rib, walleye. We'll do real good for the first 2 or 3 nights of cooking meals and using like the Traeger. John carries a Pit Boss in his truck, which is pretty cool. And the guy's a heck of a cook. And then we have a heck of a crew that kind of comes with us. We're pretty lucky, like Dewey's wife and his parents, and it's a process, and we've got it kind of down, I think, pretty good. And but at the towards the end of the week, it's leftovers and it's kind of mixed together, but it's still really good food.
Yeah, when you get to tournament day, nobody wants to cook.
Yeah, right. There's barely any time, and you're rigging your boat, and
like the one tour level gold, like you're sitting there and you had a problem in your boat, and you're up there, or somebody had a problem in the boat and you're working on it. And that's what people don't see. They think you go out and you just fish and you come back, and it's an eye-opening experience for anybody. Like running tournaments for 16 years, you talk to people that don't fish them, and they're like, oh, these guys just go out there and fish and, fish and, whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not that. They're not out partying at night. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's guys that do that, but for the most part, the serious hardcore anglers, they're up early, they're up late, and it's not a vacation for anybody.
No, that I'm still dealing with problems for Lake Erie. My boat is not 100%, but it's working. People don't know that, like there's still broken parts on there, but it's working good enough to keep it going, and luckily we travel with enough guys, and there's always some support around. What's amazing is the people that come out of the woodwork to help you wherever you're at, no matter if it's the guys you're with or a friend of a friend, or even a different angler. For example, I at Red Wing, I broke down 40 miles south down in Wabasha, and this guy came out of the woodwork at a marina and tried to help fix my boat. It was broken, and finally I said, hey, I got enough time on my kicker to maybe make it to the head of the lake and get to someone. And, I was lucky. I went 6 miles on my kicker and made it. And, Bob Brugiger, a fellow angler, we waved him down, and he's like, no problem. I'll take your coal and the fish and go 34 miles north and get you weighed in, man, through a lock and dam. Like it's pretty amazing, how many people are out there. And, I'd do the same for any other guy. Unfortunately, I had to have the same thing happen at Erie. Corey Heiser had to take my fish in. My boat broke. It didn't break down, but it electrically, it broke down like 13 different times to where I couldn't stay where Dewey and John were, where I had to go kind of reconfigure my game plan and go hide behind the islands out of the wind because my motor wouldn't run in the waves. So then when I went to go in, it kept breaking down and breaking down. And I just kept looking at my coin and I'm like, we're going to make it. Don't worry. We're going to make it. And finally I just threw in the towel and I was like, I waved down Corey Heiser and he grabbed my fish and made it in, you know? So it was, you know, it's never not easy. It's you know, it's any boat too, a new boat, an old boat, like things move. Nothing's really, you know, oh, hey, we tested this thing in 8-foot waves. Here you go. You know, it's not that way. It's
well, maybe they did for 2 minutes and then they're back in and they're not out there for an 8-hour day and that stuff, you know, and that's the thing. And you have to deal with adversity out there and overcome it. And that's 90% of the battle. You know, we had a guy on our show tell us that, you know, fishing and fishing tournaments is, you know, 70-80% mental and the rest is, you know, it's right here. And the rest is your talent because you got to keep your head in that game when that stuff happens. And, you know, in dealing, you know, the co-angler in your boat, you got to keep them, you know, on the same program and page. But going into that Lake Erie thing, I mean, that kind of changed the whole game of nobody thought we could forward face in big wind. And nobody thought, I mean, I was like, there's no way on Lake Erie forward facing is going to win this thing. And it does. And I mean, I got to give my hats off to Dewey and Hoyer because they're, you know, some of the best at that there is. And I mean, going into that, was that your like mindset? Like this is going to be one forward facing or like, yep, I'm going to get back to my trolling game and I'm going to be there.
You know, that's another great question, Curt. Like I want to be casting, but I'm so a bit of old school that you go to Lake Erie and it's trolling, right? And just talking to friends and people that were out there like, oh, we tried, it doesn't work. Well, you didn't try that hard because you were catching them trolling. You didn't dedicate the whole time to casting. One thing you have to know with the forward facing sonar is if it isn't a river or if Lake Pepin comes into effect, if you can watch the forward facing sonar, the stats prove that's what's going to win. You know, like look at a troller on Oahe or Sakakawea. Yeah, you might take the top 20, but you're not going to take the top 10. You know, you might, but it's just statistics. If there's no current on Lake Erie and you can cast at a fish, and you know, I didn't get the confidence in casting. I wanted to, I didn't. Unfortunately, I had a couple of good days trolling. So I was like, I'm just going to go troll. And part of me too, like I'm kind of a nice guy. Like my co-angler's in the back staring at a stick or, you know, it's just not, I'm like, well, we can do 4 lines in the water. But now you look at the stats, you look back at the tournament, you're like, shame on me. I didn't, you know, the second day I casted and I didn't do better, but I casted and I did fine. You know, it's just getting that confidence in it, taking that step. It's so hard. Like I might've been one of the first guys to have forward facing sonar on my boat, but I'll be honest, I'm still learning it. I'm not, there might be a kid that's 18 or 20 that steps in. That's probably better than me because he played more video and he has more time on that.
Well, yeah, I think that's a big thing right there. You said is, you know, you just because you buy one, and that's a big, you know, the hatred of the forward facing sonar in the world. Just because you buy one doesn't mean you're catching fish using it.
No,
I mean, you have to learn to use them. And if you think you've got it mastered, you're going to have an update or whatever that comes to those things. That is, you know, that's another battle in itself is learning electronics anymore. You know, I mean, it's a nonstop battle.
Yeah. You almost have to practice. You have to practice all the time if you're going to make that thing actually work for you, because that whole live sonar is targeting the fish you're looking for. Trolling is covering water and by chance catching a fish you drove by. They're just two different kinds of fishing. And I think there's a lot of people that just don't understand. You know, I know Randy Blockett just won't leave it alone. He likens it to spotlighting, and it's just not spotlighting. But there's a trick to it, and it takes it takes a lot of work, and I struggle with it. I've been using it since 2022, 21. So, it's not like I fish a lot either, but I use it more than I fish. So I have an easier time understanding what I see, but now I've got to learn to fish it. And that's where you guys get in the practice, and you're out there doing it all the time.
So I got a good question for you based off of this. So you've came up for a long time fishing this well before forward facing sonar. Do you think it's made the game easier, tougher, or the same?
Good question.
That's another good question. It's made it easier for some, and it's made it a lot tougher for others. I honestly think I wish I was kind of born back during the PWT when there was less electronics and more skill, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I would have shined then. But I'm also not the guy to sit back and not learn it. I came close to winning the championship on Devils last year with it. Mm-hmm. So, and just guiding here on Leech last week, I wouldn't have caught any fish if I didn't have it. So it's love and it's a hate. I honestly think it's helped me. I just have to get better at it, and it's the guys that have more time behind it. You can see in the stats that are doing better. That makes sense.
It does, but you even go back to the question. You look at this, right? Before forward facing sonar, there for a hot minute, Corey Springle was the untouchable guy in the circuit. I mean,
yep.
He was, and that you can go back as far back as you've been fishing. You can pick a guy every couple years that has been the untouchable guy, and it's ebb and flows, and it's and yes, you said go back to PWT when there was electronics. It took the skill, but there's a different skill level now running electronics. So it just takes I don't know if it takes the fishing skill out of it because you still got to catch them. But
it's a different skill. You're right.
It's a different. It's more honing your skills maybe than a different skill.
Yeah, yeah. And I've traveled with Corey, and he's a heck of an angler. And it's what's going to happen though too, and I already see it. These fish are catching onto it. If you listen to other podcasts, some of these Japanese anglers talk about how they don't catch them as good. With the forward-facing sonar back at home. I see that same kind of trend happening here. Not that these fish have very big brains, but they do know something going on. Like when I'm ice fishing on Red Lake and with Jason Mitchell last winter, and he has a Vexar down and I've got my active target down and he catches 5 to my 1. In 10 feet of water, those fish know what's going on. They're swimming into a zone that doesn't feel right. It's like you and I walking into a back alley with people, it's a spotlight, and you're like, nah, I don't want to be in that spotlight.
Yeah.
And you get shot just like a deer in the headlights. Like they know that's not right. We know fish doesn't know that. So at some point it'll take a turn and lakes are getting clear. Fish are getting harder to catch. It's going to change.
Well, we see that too, right? Let's just pick on Berkeley flicker shads. When they first came out, they were the hottest thing, right? And then all of a sudden they still are a good bait, but they're not like what they were. Maybe people aren't focused on them as much. Or jigging wraps were the hottest thing ever on Lake Oahe. Now people are like, I can't get them to bite on a jigging wrap. I'm going to throw a spoon. I'm going to throw, I'm throwing plastic, So I think you're right with these fish. They get used to something and you got to trick them. That's the whole goal, is out there tricking something with a brain this big every time we're on the water.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's the cool thing about fishing is it's always evolving. And
yeah,
it is fun.
People think technology is going to get banned. It's not.
No,
it has been. It's not going to happen. You got to get good at it. You got to use it to your advantage. I'm glad in the time where I grew up where guys showed me how to line up a point with a pine tree
Yeah.
Right.
Many,
That's where I guided, right? And, the wind blows in here. There's current moving through here. That's pretty cool. You see some of these young guys that are hot shots with this stuff right now, like I'd like to see how it goes in 5-10 years when maybe some older knowledge might have to come back into play.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's just it. And you still see these guys, get beat. I mean, let's just pick on Red Wing. You got some of the best guys in the circuit that know forward facing. You get to Red Wing, and that didn't play well there. I mean, it just didn't. And I mean, not saying the guys that won it weren't using it, but it wasn't the main guys in the circuit that know it, that we know for knowing it.
Yeah, exactly. I think first and second were definitely river rats that were not using it. We're in the river, and they showed it on Tour Level Gold. Bill and I started up in Pool 3. We didn't have that turned on. And John and Dewey and Hunter and Max and everybody else went down into the lake. And honestly, like I didn't get the confidence in it, because on the river you're throwing at sheephead, carp, walleyes. Like my brain just gets scattered when you're that many different fish, and you're like, oh, that's a walleye. Like I'm the type of guy like, oh, I'm throwing at that, I'm throwing at this. But like literally last week here on Leech, it finally clicked in my brain. I'm like, that's a smallmouth. I'm not casting at it. Or like I just got done fishing Graha in Grand Rapids, which that lake is chock full of huge smallmouth. And I told my partner, I'm like, don't cast. Those are smallmouth, and so it's those guys that are separating the fish, like a Tom Wynn, and they go through 100 fish and be like, okay, let's cast at that one. It's like, boom, that's the type of confidence you have to get with your forward facing sonar. I'm still learning. I'm still at the level where I want to cast at everything that's out there, so it's a big learning curve. And yeah, it's cool to see Red Wing and how that kind of shook out. Like I hopefully see, like that might be going forward with anything, or even what I'm seeing here in northern Minnesota. I fished a tournament last fall where two great minnow riggers won the tournament. When typically on a lake, forward facing sonar would dominate. These guys did not have it turned on, and they won. So that was super cool to me. And I'm like, I kind of see it turning a bit, or the fish kind of feeling the flash, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And some of these guys, I mean, Garrick McCumsey he just got his new boat rigged, and he's got like 7 or 8 live scope transducers. And I asked him one day, I said, if all of them ping at the same time, does that fish just come up with fish taco? It's like ready to eat. like is that thing just gonna come up ready to eat? Because there is no way anything is swimming through if everything goes off at one time.
Yeah, actually, my friend rigged his boat, so I got to take a look at that thing. I might have clipped a few wires.
Good, yeah. Trust me, he doesn't need any help messing stuff up. You don't need.
Yeah, no, I looked at that rig and wow, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but he understands, that's where we're at. You use that stuff at your advantage, it's crazy.
Well, he's been a big electronics guy for years, and he got hung up on do you remember Genetrons? Did you ever get around the Genetrons?
Yeah, I used to run like that, or a Cytex it was called.
Yeah, so there was a point probably not even 10 years ago that he'd tell me, if you see a Genetron, buy it. I don't care what it costs. Buy that thing, and I will buy it from you. And he still has like 4 or 5 sitting on the shelf in his garage because he believed in that Genetron. And that was a multi-transducer unit, and I say Genetron to people, and they look at me like a deer in the headlights because they don't even know what the heck it is. And I remember when he first put Lowrance HDSs in his boat, and then he finally took the Genetrons out because he was confident in him. He wouldn't do an update on his Lowrances because he knew now that he could trust these, and he wasn't going to do an update to make sure he couldn't trust them. I mean, but now he's kind of evolving, and he's learning that we got to evolve. We got to follow along and do these things. I just don't know if he went a little too overboard this time. But if you know Garrick McCumsey, you know that the dude owns a pontoon with dual 500s on the back.
I love overkill. So you mentioned Hunter, and I don't want to go away from you, but Hunter Nitty has been on fire this year. What are your thoughts about Hunter? He's a heck of a fisherman.
Oh yeah, he's good, and I mean, if you live in Minnesota here, he's come up the ranks and done very well, here in Minnesota. So, his rookie year, I think he did pretty good in the NWT, but I think he really buttoned down and focused this year and made it a goal. And you see his potential, and yeah, he's showing it. He's nobody to mess around with, and he's very confident with his electronics, and he's very skilled, and he travels with a good team, so he's pretty good.
Yeah, that's
and
fun.
same with like Will Pappenfuss, like
right.
That's another kid. I'm around up here in northern Minnesota, and that guy's pretty dialed. And like I don't want to leave anybody out of the like Eric McQuaid, and you just look at these young guys that are shining, man. They're using their electronics, and they're getting it.
It's fun to see. It really is. It's fun to see some new faces, and you're for me, you're a relatively new face, but you've been out there for a while. What's next for you? You tour level gold, National Walleye Tour. Anything else out there besides those things, or are you just concentrating and being focused?
Yeah, I just want to get better with my electronics. I have goals. I want to, get an AOI. I want to win it. I haven't won an event. I've come close in an NWT. So yeah, I don't see myself going full time. So I still want to be a good, employee, a good sales rep here in the sports fishing industry. But yeah, I've got some goals to make, but I've got to make improvements too on, on my electronics, and just getting really confident in it, because me being a little bit old school, I'm still a little comfortable sometimes at maybe trolling or doing things the old way, and I got to take a little bit more of a chance and just trust the electronics. And I'm really looking forward to Sakakawea. Like, that's one of my favorite places to fish, and hopefully we'll get the jig and plastics on there, and it'll be a lot of fun.
So they say in tour level gold, they say that you're a little conservative to maybe a fault. So are you going to try to blow it up on Sakakawea?
Yeah, I think there, and if I can get to that championship, like I always like championships, because there's no pressure. I think you've seen it on Devil's Lake or different championships where I kind of shine, because in the regular season, you can kind of get caught up on weighing a limit or just being good to get there. And honestly, with these tournaments, you just got to go all out every time almost, even to be an angler of the year. So yeah, I just, back in the day, there was points, there wasn't these electronics, that's kind of how I got trained. You just got your limit, you know what I mean? Like finishing the money. I do like to be consistent, don't get me wrong. And that won't change, but yeah, I just got to maybe let myself go here one of these times and get it done.
And I've talked to a lot of anglers that have fished my stuff, and prime example, Chris Haynes. Bridesmaid, second, thirds, fourth, always right there. Kind of reminds me of you. You're always right there. But like I told him, I said, when it happens, everything is going to click. That moment's going to happen. It's not, I mean, you might have the shittiest pre-fish ever, but the day of the tournament, nothing goes wrong. And that's what happens. I've watched it so many times sitting on my side, and guys like you that are always knocking on that door, that moment will come. And that'll be that event where you're like, I didn't even have to think, man. Like it just went, and not saying you're not going to have your fumbles through the day, but literally the guys are like, I didn't have to think. It just happened. So, I mean, I can't wait to continue. I mean, one of my favorite anglers on the circuit, when Chasen said we're getting Dusty, he goes, what do you think of Dusty? I said, absolutely. Let's get Dusty Minke on. And hands down, honestly, one of the nicest guys I've ever met on the circuit. You'll take your time to talk to anyone, and it's a great, you're truly the representation of a pro angler in my eyes, and like you said, you made the comment earlier, like forward facing, I'm worried about my pro in the back or my co in the back looking at a stick. There's guys out there that don't care, they're just out there to catch fish. And that's truly what not winning all the time makes you a pro angler. I mean, it's truly who you are as a human being. And I got to say, hands down, without a doubt, that's who Dusty Minke is that I've seen. So I appreciate who you are. Keep being who you are, man. That is awesome.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And yeah, I want my co-anglers to leave the boat and want to come back, and I truly think they do every time. So I'm out there trying to have a fun time and trying to do it right. And I think it's going to come down, pretty soon here. It's going to happen. Everything's got to click. And I've done well on 1 day tournaments, man. It's these 2 and 3 day tournaments. You got to do it every day, and it's not easy, but one of these times it's going to click here. I know it's coming.
No
Absolutely. And before we get it going here, I know we kept you a little longer than we wanted to. Your White Claw's probably getting a little light there. Who helps you get down the road? You want to shout out to anybody that helps you get down the road? And because I mean, it does, like you said, you got a day job, but this doesn't happen without great partnerships.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. I've been fortunate over the years, and the big thing is my job and the company that I work for, North Country Marketing, gives me the time off and the time to do this. And my customers understand it. And it's cool that everybody's kind of a fan, and I get to take some of them fishing, and that's a huge thing, so
let me ask you this before you go and do it. If you take your customer fishing and you have a bad day, are they just all over you? Like just won't razz the hell out of you? I thought you're a pro.
Yeah. No, like one of them came with me last week, pre-fishing for Graha, and we didn't catch a whole lot of fish, but he's like, holy moly, you opened some eyes to me with this active target. Like, this is really cool. So he got to see hundreds of walleyes. They just weren't biting, So it's more of like an experience and kind of see like how it goes, than from a regular day of fishing. But no, I've been really fortunate, and over the years with really cool sponsors, and like this year, I've had a lot of big help with Dakota Lithium, North Edge Exteriors, Northland Fishing Tackle, and then Elliott and 2B Fishing Rods, Wave Pro. Everybody there, everybody's been pretty awesome. And like I said, I have a day job, so these sponsors know that I'm not out there every day on social media, pumping the wheels up, but they know that I'm using their stuff, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Fantastic. Dustin, thank you. It's been great to have you. Thanks for taking the time out. You've got co-anglers topside that need you.
Actually, they're up there yelling. Can you hear them? They're all screaming.
That's right. I kind of got the feeling like, okay, you know what? They've been quiet for a while, but now it's time to partay. It is the night before the 4th of July. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Well, thanks, you guys. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Dusty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, Curt, we've got a little bit of business to take care of real quick there before we go. I know you've got hats. These are pretty awesome hats.
Oh yeah, big shout out to Shields for the new. You just debuted the sneak peek of the 50th Gov Cup hat.
Oh, was I supposed to not do that?
Yeah, that's fine, man. It's awesome. I can't wait to get them out there. Probably one of my favorite hats we've ever done. So big shout out to Jenna and and Caden and Tyler and Ben and all the people at Shields that have made this happen. I'm so excited. 50th Gov Cup. I can't wait, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait until Not next Thursday, but the next Thursday. We get this thing rolling.
So next Thursday, the 18th, you guys can find tickets on thefishingcrew.com. They might be up now. They might be up tomorrow or by the end of the week. But the pre-party, 50th Gov Cup party, limited tickets for sale. No money's going in our pocket. All proceeds, all the food has been donated. All the food been donated, the building, everything. So all proceeds are going to go help fund kids fishing, help us put on kids fishing events in the future, help be able to sponsor some kids fishing activities. Can't wait for that. Lieutenant Governor's Cup, man, first ever Travis Stout with Chalik Signs has went above and beyond. So that's also be up there on the website to sign up. The first ever Lieutenant Governor's Cup kids fishing tournament, Saturday of the Gov Cup, starting at 9 in the morning. Fish from 9 to 1. We're going to weigh them across the Gov Cup stage. And there's going to be a hot dog feed provided by the Boathouse. The grand prize winner is going to win a fully loaded fishing kayak, awesome. Donated by Central Dakota Eye Care. Dr. Nick Marceau is going to have a Helix 5 donated by Downs Marine. We have a ton of prizes coming from this. All the local and all our sponsors have stepped up. Berkeley and we'll get the flyer on next week so everybody can see it because it's just a boatload of sponsors. I don't want to miss anybody, but Travis has done an amazing job with this. Let's get the kids there. Let's get them fishing, feed them some hot dogs, and they can watch the first day of the weigh-ins, which is going to be pretty awesome.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, 4th of July tomorrow. Happy 4th of July to you.
Don't blow your fingers off, Jason.
That's right. All right, we'll see you.
Oh, holy crap. We had good views, good comments.
Good. Yeah. Oh, it was okay. Did you get logged out? Because it says I'm logged out and I can't do anything.
Oh, hold on.